This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook, and I am so excited to have a true entrepreneur, David Tao. He is the editorial director, co-founder of BarBend. And Dave, you know, it's so funny because you went to Harvard. Mm-hmm. You're one of the few people that actually admit that. They usually say I went to school in Boston.
I've said that a few times.
That's my brother's trick. But, you know, what was your expectation going to an Ivy League school of what you wanted to do getting out?
I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And I applied to law school, got into law school, and deferred for 2 years. I was one of those
Another Ivy
kids.
League law school too?
Well, Harvard Law School.
Oh, God.
And nothing, I'm not consistent, but...
So you're a fairly good student at the very least.
I was good at school.
Yeah,
I was maybe too good at school, actually,
Yeah.
because then I think that the world's not academic. Entrepreneurship's not academic, right? There's no book you study. I mean, you can read books, right?
Yeah.
But I think it was actually a weird mind frame change for me to get out of being a good student and that skill set completely different than what I use today. So I almost wish I had kind of shaken that sooner and maybe gone a little bit outside the realm of academia earlier on in college.
I wish I would went the other direction. My siblings all went to the Ivy Leagues, and I didn't understand the academia side till later when I got to college. It was got me in a good law school, but
I think you're doing just fine.
Well, good. So you wanted to be a journalist, and in some sense, do you consider yourself a journalist right now?
I manage a team of journalists. I think I am, but there are far better journalists on the BarBend team. I'm just there to facilitate their journalism, basically, in their writing. And you know, I was a staff writer for Fortune.com for a hot second before I kind of got into the startup realm. I was a contributor for Forbes. Really lucky to write for those places. Business journalism, just not what really grabbed me as much as I thought it would, actually.
And what did grab you away from business journalism?
I really love identifying audiences that are really passionate and no one's giving them content. I like building something new. So in fitness, that was fitness 10 years ago, right? Was create content for people in the fitness business. And I was involved with some startups and some brands 10 years ago who were doing that. But after that market got a little bit saturated, it was finding those sub-niches. They always say the riches are in the niches. I say niche.
Yeah.
So I love finding those groups that are actually pretty big. When I say like a little group, it might be millions and millions of people, and they just don't have those resources.
Do you think, David, because you know we both have seen this scope, scale, and spectrum evolve, and what I mean by that is, it's funny you say, you know, these sub-niches are millions of people, but I think that everything that is even a niche or a niche of any kind has at least millions of people. Because we have so much access to this huge audience of billions of people and growing, that, you know, opening presents or doing fingernails or how to straighten your hair gets millions of niche people.
It's interesting. You could have something like, my girlfriend's really into knitting.
Yeah.
There are more than millions of knitters in the world.
Right.
There are tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of knitters in the world. And that's like a niche that 15 years ago or 20 years ago, Web 1.0, no one would have really thought like, oh, that's where the money is.
Right.
That's a big audience, and if you can reach that many people because so much of the world is online, suddenly you've got a pretty large country's worth of potential consumers, readers, viewers. I mean, the volume is there.
It's interesting because I think one of the biggest problems with so many people that want to either build their own brand, their company's brand, or create content for people is that they don't understand spectrum. They don't understand, they're trying to talk to everyone, and they're not consistent either to find out who they're talking to if they don't know who they're talking to. What are some of the tips to find what you call a sub-niche?
Well, I think being data-oriented is really important. And it's funny because you say people kind of, they try and go too broad. They try and produce content for everyone. If you produce content for everyone, you're going to make no one happy.
Right.
You need to find 100 different ways to get the same reader or viewer or listener, because you're going to meet them on the platform they're on with the content they want. And you can be data oriented. I mean, the internet's not young anymore. We have data analytics. We have research, whether it's something you do your own for audience testing with paid testing, or whether it's data you get from other people, see how other sites are doing. Like, we know what people are searching for online, right? Google Trends is a thing. Google Webmaster Tools is a thing. Like, these are resources that are very accessible for a lot of people. So you can get a sense of the scope and size of your audience using open tools or very cheap, relatively cheap tools, even before you start a website or brand.
And even before the website side, what about testing? So one of the areas that I've learned over the last 3 years, because that's when I started to build my own personal brand, leaving my experience of building big corporate brands and big entertainment and celebrity brands, could I build a brand out of a 50-year-old, kind of sub executive is the way that I describe myself. And I use testing. Beyond the data. I wanted to, data meant something to me, but I wanted to test things. What are some of the best mechanisms that you guys utilize to test an audience to find that spectrum, frequency, or niche?
Well, the good news is the same testing pattern to test content quality that we used at the beginning of BarBend, we get to use now, which is just we ask our readers, or in our podcast, our listeners, or viewers on our videos. Comments are open. We ask people to reach out to us directly. We'll actually survey people, ping people directly who are active in the comments, who are super users, who are top fans on our Facebook page, or interact with us. And we just ask them, because you can get an idea of quantity of people in a niche, right, with data. But it's subjective. What is good content? It's a little bit subjective, and sure, you can see what performs better, right? But at the end of the day, viewers, readers, listeners, they're really smart, and they're getting smarter. If you're making something that's just paint by the numbers and doesn't have passion or quality behind it, they're gonna be able to smell that from a mile away. Sometimes you just have to ask people and ask influencers in the space what they like to see, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting, but beyond that litmus test, there's another one that I really like because it's counterintuitive to myself and my own quantum nature. It's the internet. A lot of these people oversell, back and sell, lie, manipulate online. They stand in front of cars that they don't own and houses they don't own. But sooner or later, what I love about the internet is the truth comes out.
The more ostentatious you are online, and the more you blow things out of proportion, the more people are curious what the house of cards really looks like. So build content based on what you actually have and what you're actually capable of building.
Why do you think also within that context, it seems like there's a whole nother trend, whether it's in politics or business or inspiration, that I see that, before it was like, okay, we're going to reveal that this is factually not true, or right? But now there seems to be this trend that, okay, we reveal so much that's not true, nobody gives a crap. Do you see that?
It's a bit of, it's kind of like consumer fatigue as far as these reveals. Yeah, I mean, the good news about what we do with BarBend is we cover strength sports and strength training, which by its nature is super quantifiable.
Right.
Weight is weight. 10 pounds here weighs 10 pounds over there. It's really cool because it is a space where people see through BS.
Wait, I have to stop you for one second because this is really interesting. I love when people tell me 10 pounds here equals 10 pounds here, because I work out at the same gym at my house, but then I travel 200 days. And my rule of life, my priority of life is 1 hour minimum to my health.
That's fantastic.
Please tell me what happens to 10 pounds at 24-hour fitness compared to 20 for the Starwood gyms, because they're not the same weight.
One of the biggest thing is your nervous system is changing. Maybe your sleep patterns change on the road. The flight, weight can now it is the same, I think, unless there's someone's pulling a trick on you at Starwood Resorts, right?
Right. But if they were really smart, they'd make it less. So you feel like, whoa,
I gotta
so
stay
refreshed.
here. I'm at my best. I'm at my healthiest.
I just maxed every single rep I did. I maxed. It'd be awesome.
You just gave them a $1 billion idea to get repeat clients.
This is what the playbook's about $1 billion ideas for everybody else. That's good though. All right, you were saying though, so 10 pounds is quantitative.
Yeah. What I love about what we do, the news we write on, and the training tips we get, the advice we get, it's very research backed, right? If we're giving training tips, there's research behind that. And there's more and more research making us smarter about what actually goes on in the human body. It's amazing 20 years ago how little we knew about how strength was built, how muscle was built. We know more and more today, although there's still a lot. I think actually sleep is the next great research frontier.
That's my game if you listen to my podcast, right?
I'd love to talk about that on a separate episode.
I have a sleep coach. It's the number one habit we all share, the most time that we spend on a habit, and the most underutilized subconscious and unconscious powerful mechanism ever created. I study sleep, I practice sleep, and I have a sleep coach.
We're getting really, really into sleep content, more and more so in BarBend. At BarBend, every month we're doing more. We're having guests on our podcast just to talk about sleep research.
Dr. Meeta Singh, she just got a World Series ring. Nationals won all 4 road games, and part of what they attributed that to is how rested they were.
No surprise. But whether it's training advice we're giving or news we're writing on world records or competition results, strength and strength sports, strength training or strength sports, they're both very quantifiable, right? Like it's down to the numbers. Occasionally you'll get someone being accused of using fake plates or fake weights. Like that actually,
like Starwood.
That actually, yeah, looking at you, Starwood. It actually, so besides that rare instance, like it is quantifiable, it is objective. People can watch someone make a world record and see that it's real. They can judge for themselves. So there is this layer of acceptability and objectivity in what we cover, and I think that reduces or at least changes our journalistic burden a little bit, as opposed to reporting on things that may or may not be facts, because like you can kind of see it for yourself.
Yeah, I love, and why I want to also have done a podcast swap with you and beyond is the mindset side of it.
Yeah.
Right? I really, where my expertise lies is, in that space, and you guys do a really nice job of quantifying a result from a different mindset.
What we understand, or what we're trying to understand, is that strength is a very broad topic, right? We thought we were starting with this little sub-niche. It's a broad topic. Everything impacts strength, sleep, nutrition. Are you moving? This is all important to every human being. Like everyone inhabits a body. We're not AI yet. We're not like uploaded to the cloud just yet, right? maybe in 10 or 20 years.
Downloaded, but we're not uploaded yet.
Exactly. And so it does impact everyone. Like everyone's body is impacted. And there was this huge rush in popularity in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s for endurance training, marathons, triathlons. Awesome. The strength component of fitness, I think, is just as important. And what we are trying to do is to make that more acceptable in the mainstream and to make that something people talk about, right? We all know the person who trained to run a marathon, and we're super proud of them. What about that person training to compete in powerlifting, or training for a CrossFit competition, or training for a weightlifting competition, or training just to hit like a bodyweight deadlift or squat like that? That's also a very, very cool goal that can improve your lifestyle, improve your longevity, and improve your quality of life.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond an old-fashioned perspective of how much you can bend.
Yeah.
Bend, because honestly, you're talking about different sports that are full body, and just the idea of core strength and the effects of core strength, which is some stuff that I've learned on BarBend, by the way. But it is true, right? Back problems and other things ruin and deteriorate your entire life, and it shortens your life.
Yeah.
And strength is a huge component of that, like you said, and that enlightenment. Now, you're still talking to the niche. How often, people ask me when I first started doing my content, consistency of quality content was my goal. I wanted to empower just 2 people that would empower 2 people every year, and I knew in 20 years I'd have 2 million people. Luckily, it's going a little faster, but that's all I really needed.
Yeah.
But for me, consistency was always an issue starting out for a niche, because you are addressing a niche and you have to get 2 people in that niche. The cool thing about a niche is it accelerates and exponentially grows a lot faster than the wider spectrum. The hard part about a niche is, you got to keep sending stuff out there to find the niche and to get them ambassadorship of the niche. How often, does that look like for you, the consistency side?
Well, we publish a lot of content. We publish content every day, including weekends. We publish anywhere between 5 and 15 articles a day. Could be training tips, research, reviews, news, analysis, you name it. It spikes a little bit when we have relevant events. We publish 2 podcasts a week. That's going to be ticking up pretty rapidly soon. We publish 4 to 5 original videos a week. We publish on social media multiple times a day. When we started off, we weren't sure where to source our content or what people really wanted to hear. As we've grown, as our audience has grown, as we've gotten more feedback, and as the strength community has grown, there's more stuff to write on. There's more research to write on as people get more interested in actually researching strength training. There's more news to write on as more people compete in these sports and as these sports get more popular. It's also an Olympic year, so weightlifting, very hot button issue in 2020. And that was a big reason for our early growth. We started in 2016. We were just like a 3-person blog putting out content that we just weren't 100% sure. We weren't really 100% sure about it, to be honest. We had the data, but we were trying to nail down that quality question. And the 2016 Olympics was one of our first big traffic spikes. And we were pretty much, in my opinion, we were one of the few outlets online writing about weightlifting for weightlifters from the perspective of people who were passionate about strength training. It wasn't just the 100-word snippet that you'd read on a major media outlet because they don't care about weightlifting and really gymnastics and track are their bread and butter, or basketball, right? We were writing about it from the perspective of someone who really, really wanted to analyze what happened. And so that was like our first big uptick, and that's when we realized we have to produce a lot of content, especially around events. You got to take advantage of when the mainstream tunes in.
Yeah, and which leads to the ultimate question, is monetization.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? This is a business. You got into this to make money, to help people and have fun. I'm sure. Yeah, you seem
in some order.
Yeah, in some order. I'm very passionate about making money first, because I don't think you can help people if you're not abundant in what you have.
You can't sustain it.
You can't give what you don't have. And I think entrepreneurs sometimes take too much of a humanitarian view about business. It's business. You got to stay in business. You got to make money to stay in business. One of the questions I always have are different perspectives on how to monetize content.
Yeah.
And it's in some ways coming from a marketing and media side, traditional. When you have a niche, it's easier to monetize because you know the audience and you know the products that address that exact audience. There's no fluff, right? When we go to a supplement company and say, you are a strength supplement, and we speak to people that are interested in strength, it's a nice ROI.
The pitch is more direct, certainly.
Yeah.
My big thing for any content company, especially niche content companies, is diversification, both in the type of media you're producing. We all know those brands who are no longer around, who went all in on Facebook, right? And then they changed the algorithm, and those brands who raised tens of millions of dollars in VC funding, poof, up in smoke. Diversification of your outlets and how you reach your audience, and diversification of revenue streams. For us, we have a few different revenue streams. Traditional kind of on-site advertising through an ad network, that's big for us. We get enough traffic to where that's a significant revenue source. Wasn't always the case for us. Sponsored content, working with brands, working on cool content packages to build stories around their products, their influencers, another source of revenue. Podcast sponsorships, another source of revenue for us. We have some reviews on the site, so we monetize via some affiliate links, all disclosed and disclaimed, much like what you'd see on like the Wirecutter or other New York Times properties. And what else am I missing? Oh, YouTube has become more and more of a revenue source for us. One that I'm never going to put all my chips in on, right? But that check from YouTube, as our audience grows on YouTube and our videos gain more traction, gets bigger every month. So, I never thought that we'd really be factoring that in as a significant revenue source, but it's something we pay attention to now.
That's awesome. And what do you think the fastest growing revenue source will be?
We've seen a really, really big uptick in traffic so far in 2020. Not to time peg this podcast too much,
good.
But since January of 2020, we've seen it depends on exactly which type of content you bucket it into, but maybe a 35 to 40% increase in traffic, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. So for us, on-site advertising through an ad networks that we work with has been a really quickly growing source of revenue for us. Right now, we're at about 2 million sessions a month. I think by the end of 2020, we can feasibly get up to 6 or 7 million sessions a month, and I think that ad revenue can scale accordingly. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. And are you going to stick to this niche and grow this, or are you going to add niches or switch niches?
Man, if this is a question that keeps me up at night. Not in a bad way, just I want to think about it. I think BarBend's going to get a little broader, right? I think the two ways we're going to get broader in 2020 are, we're going to continue our core competency writing on powerlifting, weightlifting, CrossFit, strongman, and strength training. But I think that last piece, strength training, people who might be interested in going to the gym for the first time, they've never picked up a barbell or a dumbbell. Where do they start? What resources can we produce to help them get started on that strength journey to make it a part of their life, especially with an aging population? I think that's an area where we're really going to grow in 2020. And also bodybuilding, physique competition, things like a figure and fitness competition, things like that. I think we're going to start incorporating more and more of that. Those have more established media brands, right? Those have the magazines that are now the websites, that are now the media companies that run those competitions. So we didn't get into that initially because we thought that market was already a little bit defined. But I think we can start making some inroads there.
That is awesome. Well, I think the main message here is, if you want to get rich, find your niche. We got double Davids here. David Tao, co-founder of BarBend, with David Meltzer, with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.